Peter King talking NFL football. Well-regarded, long-time writer with Sports Illustrated, founder of Monday Morning Quarterback, and so much more, and joins us here on Big Board Sports. Peter King, Roger Weiland in Albany. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Roger.
Been a long time. I had you on many years ago, and I always got a kick out of it. When you came to Albany years ago to cover training camp, you would always end up going to watch the Tri-City Valley Cats. Am I correct on that?
I love the Valley Cats. I love that little stadium, great little craft beer place, and a really great place to just unwind and watch good caliber of baseball. I think at the time, I think it was the Astros. Are they still the Astros?
Yeah, they are still affiliated with the Astros organization and still drawing, Peter, like crazy. The novelty of that stadium that you've been to on many occasions has not worn off.
Oh, that's great. You know, there's something about going around the country. One of the great things about that little training camp trip that I do every year is that I usually go to 3 or 4 ball games along the way, and I always make sure that I go to a minor league stadium that I hadn't seen before. This year, I've been to this place before, but I went to a place in Greenville, South Carolina, where they have sort of a replica of Fenway Park. It's a Red Sox single A team in the South Atlantic League, and it just is I just love those environments, just to sit there, have a nice night, and relax and watch baseball.
Well, we actually do miss Giants training at the University at Albany. Those are special times for 16 years. Speaking of the Giants, Peter, let me start with Odell Beckham Jr. this past week and some of his antics, off the field, on the sideline, kind of rubbed some people the wrong way. Maybe even Eli Manning, who I know put his arm around Odell. What's your thoughts on what you saw out of Odell Beckham Jr. on Sunday against the Washington Redskins?
Well, part of me wants to be very, very critical of him because he's being selfish. But, most of the stuff that he did on the sidelines is not hurting anybody. I think that a lot of times today, especially because he has become such a public figure, that I think all eyes are focused on him on the sidelines because he's become such a big star, and rightfully so. But I do think the one thing that bothers me a little bit is that, he doesn't seem to be able to settle down or to turn it down a little bit. He seems to consistently be just to go over the top. And I think that's the one thing that Ben McAdoo and Eli Manning probably have to work on, trying to corral a little bit.
How about this Giants team overall? Spent so much money, Peter, off season on the defense. I thought they'd beat the Redskins and be sitting at 3-0. They didn't. And now that division, the NFC East, and Dallas and Philadelphia obviously playing extremely well to start this season. How about your overall thoughts on this Giants team as they sit at 2-1 getting ready for the next game, which is Monday night in Minnesota?
Well, I think that one of the things that I was concerned about when at the start of this, when you basically saw how much money that Jerry Reese had spent, you were really concerned, at least I was, that the players who they bought were B and B plus players. Now, I think Harrison, Snacks Harrison is an A run stopper without any question. But the other two guys that they paid very big for, particularly Janoris Jenkins, had been, Janoris Jenkins has been a good player, okay, but he hasn't been a great player. He's been beaten a lot. He was beaten a lot in coverage in St. Louis. But clearly, and obviously Olivier Vernon, I feel the same way about him. I think Olivier Vernon is a good to very good player who was extremely fortunate to be able to get into a bidding war between the Giants and the Jacksonville Jaguars. without that bidding war, I don't know. I think that he would not have made. He probably would have made about 20 or 25% less, and then the contract would have seemed a lot more reasonable. But again, look, the proof is in the pudding so far, and they have played very well on defense. I thought that their peak was against the Saints when they really frustrated Drew Brees, and anytime you're going to hold the Saints to 13 points, that is a tremendous accomplishment. But I think they didn't play nearly as well against Washington. They let Washington go up and down the field significantly more than against New Orleans. So I still think that they're a work in progress on defense.
Peter, Zach By joining Roger this morning in studio. I have a question. We have a ton of Bills fans in this area in upstate New York. Were you impressed by Buffalo's win against Arizona? I mean, that score was 33-7 in the third quarter. Or were you just less impressed with the performance of the Cardinals?
No, I think Zach, a lot of times what happens, this was one of those games on the NFL schedule that, Parcells used to always talk about, in the NFL, the desperate team always has a huge advantage in a game. And again, it wasn't that Arizona really didn't want to win, but I think in this particular case, Buffalo's season was on the line in this game because clearly, if you know that you're going to New England in week 4, you lose to the Arizona Cardinals in week 3, you're starting 0-4, almost certainly. And so I look at that and I say that they had to have a 4-alarm fire going on in their locker room and coaches' offices. That plus the fact that they fire the offensive coordinator the week after they have the worst defensive day in the 120-game career of Rex Ryan as a head coach. So, this was about if there is such a thing as a must-win for a coach in the month of September, Arizona at Buffalo, for Buffalo, was that. And so I was surprised by the outcome, but not at all shocked because the Bills are a talented team. They're not as good as Arizona, but they're a talented team that had a desperation, that day that Arizona just didn't have.
Peter King with us here on Big Board Sports, Sports Illustrated, founder of Monday Morning Quarterback. Follow up on that, Peter. Can the Bills beat the Patriots in Foxborough, or are we going to have a 4-0 start for New England and 4-0 without Tom Brady at quarterback?
You've been watching this over the first month of the season, and we've all seen this incredible run by the New England Patriots. And I'd be very surprised if Buffalo went in and beat them. I think the one thing about New England that this has shown is that, Bill Belichick, a lot of coaches talk about, avoiding whatever trap that you can be led into, the proverbial distractions and all that. Coaches talk about it. The New England Patriots live it. They just don't let that stuff bother them. Never have. And in my opinion, that's one of the things in Bill Belichick's, when Bill Belichick retires and you look back on him, one of the things I will think is that he avoided all the pitfalls that so many coaches in his era couldn't avoid. And, the one other thing I think is interesting about watching the Patriots now, it's just a great example of what happens when you actually every day, 365 days a year, you think about building roster depth and not just think about making sure that you keep your superstars and then supplement that with a bunch of guys around them. And that's an exaggeration, but Bill Belichick, I think, has always done a really good job. Case in point, they make their offensive line, they don't, at one point, after 2 games this year, in 6 of their previous 7 games, they had different starting lineups on their offensive line. 6 different combinations in 7 weeks, or in a 7-game stretch. And what that says to me is Bill Belichick is getting all 8 offensive linemen on his roster ready to play every week. And so if they get an injury, you shrug your shoulders and you plug the next guy in. So I think that, and I think that he's done a really good job of coaching his coaches. And those are a few things that I think make them a real special organization right now.
Peter, a couple quick hitters here for me, and we'll let you go. Most impressive 3-0 team in your opinion, with Vikings, Patriots, Ravens, Broncos, Eagles.
Patriots most impressive, but not far away. Philadelphia to beat Pittsburgh 34-3. Starting a rookie quarterback playing his 3rd NFL game is an incredible accomplishment.
All right, 1-2 team, in your opinion, Peter King, is more desperate for a win this week? Cardinals, Colts, Panthers, or Bengals?
Well, can I answer it this way?
Yeah.
Of all those teams you just mentioned, Carolina is the team that I look at and just say, hey, look, they lost to Minnesota and they lost to Denver. And Minnesota and Denver could meet in the Super Bowl. And so I wouldn't, that's the 1-2 team I would not be worried about at all. But if you talk about teams that probably are more desperate to get a win, I would say Cincinnati. And the reason is that Cincinnati cannot afford in that division, especially with Baltimore getting off to a strong start. They can't afford to fall 3 games out of the division lead after 4 weeks.
Final stop. Jets are 1-2. Seattle, Pittsburgh, and Arizona on deck. Quick thoughts on this Jets team sitting at 1-2.
The Jets have a good enough defense that they're going to be in every game, but they can't afford, obviously, to turn the ball over 8 times in a game. And look, I'm not one who says play Geno Smith or play Hackenberg or anything like that. Sometimes quarterbacks have crap games, and that's what happened to Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's shown, in my opinion, I think he's had 2 real stinker games over the last 19, and that is his last game of the year against Buffalo last year and the last game he played against Kansas City. So I'm not all that concerned about Fitzpatrick. I think he'll bounce back, and I think he'll be okay. I would have said before Sunday that I did say before Sunday that I thought the Jets have a really good chance to take one of the 2 wild cards. That was a loss that causes anybody who watches the Jets to really have second thoughts about whether they can be a sustainable, good enough team on offense to supplement what I think is a very good defense.
Peter King, a pleasure having you on the program. I'm glad you remember the good old days with the Tri-City Valley Cats. And
it's great. Well, thank you, Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Peter.
Zach, for having me on.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Good job, Peter. As always, Peter King, been around for a long time. Sports Illustrated founder, now Monday Morning Quarterback, here with us here on Big Board Sports.